Democrats tonight accusing the Department of Justice of creating what they're calling a, quote, clearinghouse for Rudy Giuliani's fabricated dirt on a political opponent, as Attorney General William Barr is urging caution on any information that comes out of Ukraine. Well, let's turn to President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, joining us live to talk about that. Mr. Mayor, good to have you back with us.
Nice to be back. How are you?
I'm very good. You're out there making the rounds, and so let's talk about this. The Attorney General has said, listen, I'll welcome this information that's coming in from Mr. Giuliani. We're apparently told that it's going to come through the U.S. Attorney's Office in Pittsburgh, is going to take a look at it. The FBI says its agents will evaluate it. Obviously, Democrats not happy. The House Judiciary Chair Jerry Nadler says this in a letter to Barr. He says any official relationship between Mr. Giuliani and the department raises serious questions about conflicts of interest. Are you getting special treatment, or is this something that the DOJ would do otherwise?
Am I getting special treatment? I first revealed these facts about Joe Biden's multiple crimes in Ukraine, Iraq, China.
Alleged.
Oh, gosh, about 10 months ago, and nobody paid attention. Not only am I not getting special treatment, I've been getting terrible treatment. This should have been investigated 3 years ago. If President Trump had gone on a stage and said, I pressured the president of another country to dismiss a prosecutor, there'd be an investigation the next day. In fact, they tried to say President Trump said something like that about 2 months ago, and every headline, every newspaper, bribery, 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 bribery. Joe Biden says it, part of the protected class. All those people in the Council of Foreign Relations don't even inquire, why did he have the prosecutor fired? Because his son was in the middle of an investigation.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
I didn't just give him information. I have a document here that's a smoking gun. It comes from Latvia. It describes Hunter Biden's involvement in laundering $14.8 million. It's a government document of Latvia, $14.8 million being laundered through 3 different banks and disguised as loans.
Okay,
That's
lot
only
to
the
unpack
tip
there.
of the iceberg.
But I want to read a couple of things, because folks have said, listen, Shokin was already under, this is the prosecutor in Ukraine that the former vice president wanted to get rid of, that he wasn't doing a great job when it came to investigating things like Burisma, and so other people wanted him out anyway. New York Magazine says this, back in January, contrary to the Trumpist claims, Shokin was not investigating Burisma at the time. The Obama administration, in which Biden played a key role on Ukraine policy, was specifically upset with Shokin for his failure to investigate Burisma. I guess you're not buying it.
I'm not buying it at all, because I have a fact. They're lying. On February 2nd, 2016, the investigator, Shokin, who wasn't investigating, raided the offices of Burisma and put them under arrest. On February 18th, he received a notification from the Latvian government that Hunter Biden was under investigation for substantial money laundering activities. He had issued numerous subpoenas. I have all the records of the prosecutor's office, so the Democrats can lie all they want. It is a matter of record that Biden's son was under investigation.
Okay, what
and I'll
about
shock you even more.
What about the UK, though?
Joe Biden was under investigation.
Okay, what about the UK, though? Because they obviously had very big concerns about the leader of Burisma, and they had pushed for investigations. They wanted information from Shokin, and they said, listen, Shokin didn't help us. He didn't cooperate and help us look into this owner of Burisma or any of these claims.
Can I just point something out about how false that is? Shokin wasn't the prosecutor general then. That's a totally different man who did this. In fact, that man got fired for that, and Shokin was put in after that happened. I know the incident you're referring to. They were trying to seek $27 million from Biden's boss, the crook, Zlochevsky. They didn't send in the papers on time because the president of the Ukraine was paid a $5 million bribe by Zlochevsky. Mr. Shokin was not on duty, wasn't involved, wasn't prosecutor general at the time. He became prosecutor general 3 months later. So the lying Democrats have really got to try to get their facts straight. Look, Biden is so guilty. It is so obvious this was a bribe. You have to be a fool not to see it.
Okay, well, apparently there's a lot of disagreement about whether there was an investigation or not, but there are a number of people in the international community saying that Shokin wasn't doing the Burisma investigation. But let me play something for you from the Attorney General.
Why would it matter? Why would it matter? Shokin just says the same thing Biden said. So suppose Shokin wasn't investigating. Suppose Shokin wasn't doing this or that.
Then it matters that Biden was calling for his dismissal if it wasn't connected to a Burisma investigation.
But it was connected to a Burisma. You have public facts that show that. You have an arrest on February 2nd. But the fraudulent American media won't publish that. They say he didn't know about it. It was in the New York Times. How did he not know about it? They're lying and lying and lying, and the corrupt media just repeats it.
Okay.
Why doesn't somebody interview Shokin?
Yeah, and I
know why? Because our embassy won't give him a visa. Do you know he was poisoned? Do you know that?
I do not know that. But let me.
I have the medical record. I've put it on your channel.
Okay, I
have the medical record that says he was poisoned with lead. With mercury poison.
We know, and that gets to my point here with the Attorney General Barr. There's a lot of dirty dealing and dirty doings in Ukraine. So this is what the Attorney General says about that, and caution.
We have to be very careful with respect to any information coming from the Ukraine. There are a lot of agendas in the Ukraine. There are a lot of cross currents. And we can't take anything we receive from the Ukraine at face value.
Okay, so he says, though, he's willing to take a look. They're willing to vet everything, and they're going to do that. So, I mean, do you agree that, listen, there are people with competing interests over there?
Of course.
But do you feel good now that they've said, okay, we welcome this information from Mr. Giuliani. We're going to take a look.
Shannon, I investigated the mafia. I investigated terrorist groups. They all have conflicting interests, and they all lie one after another. Unfortunately for Biden, this case doesn't come from the Ukraine. It comes from his mouth. Just listen to his statement.
I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
I offered something of value in exchange for official action. And then there are records showing that his son was under investigation. That is a first-year assistance bribery case. All the Ukrainians do is corroborate the confession of Joe Biden. Just listen to the tape. All Shokin says is largely the same thing that Biden says, and then 5 other prosecutors. 5. And
so
we haven't interviewed a single one of them.
Do you think you'll get a fair shake now, though, with the DOJ?
I sure hope so, because the Vice President of the United States committed a crime at the highest levels of government. It hurts our relationship with the Ukraine. We are fools in the Ukraine. Every time he went there and talked about corruption for 4 years, Ukrainians would say, hey, start with getting rid of your son, Joe. Your son's pulling in $8 million for a no-show job, and he's unfortunately, he's a drug addict, and we all know it.
All right.
So you're talking to us about corruption, Joe? How about you straighten it out? And right. Obama, how about you straighten out? You knew all about it. It was in the New York Times, and you didn't do a darn thing.
Yeah, and there were people that were reported, speaking publicly, that they had concerns at least about the conflict of interest, the appearance of it. There were definitely concerns within the Obama administration.
If you watch my podcast, I have 3 witnesses who say it was well known all throughout Ukraine that Joe Biden had been bribed by Mykola Zlochevsky, and the bribe was getting the son the job, and then he would get Zlochevsky out of trouble.
Okay.
And that they were paid anywhere from $8 to $20 million for it.
So the allegations are there. The DOJ says they will take a look, and we will keep tracking it, because I know you've been trying to get it to him for a couple of years. Mr. Mayor, always good to have you with us. Thanks for coming in.
It's like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. When America was giving aid to Ukraine, it was doing it through what are called non-government organizations, not directly to Ukraine. A lot of that money never showed up in the Department of Ecology or the Prosecutor General's office. A lot of it kind of stuck with the NGO. There's a common theme in all of these NGOs, by the way, as they will testify. They call them children of Soros. One of the main ones is Antac, which had its own investigation that was corruptly, dismissed by Yovanovitch. but all of them are extremely left-wing. There'll be testimony to that effect and documentary proof. And this still has never been explained. We're talking about billions of dollars in American aid that's unaccounted for, that went to Soros's NGOs like Soros's, extremely left-wing. Some of them not even in Ukraine. There's one here that involved Italy getting $4 million to straighten out corruption. It was intended for the prosecutor general's office, and it was given to a NGO in Italy. And then you wonder why, when they fire Shokin, they can get people from Italy and England and Germany and to all say that he's corrupt. They're all people from the NGOs that were being paid off. This is a vast crime. This is probably, obviously, going to be the biggest scandal so far of this century. Let's hope there's none greater. It makes Teapot Dome look cheap when we get finished with the amounts of money. And there's a lot more to it. And in the next episode, we'll finish the outline. You've got most of it. And then we'll get right to the testimony. And you'll get to see some of these witnesses on camera for yourself to see that we have something called proof, which Democrats do not have against the president and never had. And we have something else on our side that makes it easy to accept all the attacks on me, my reputation, my family, and the threats. You know what we have on our side? Truth. Spent a lot of my career fighting corruption. I've done many, many difficult corruption cases. And some of them I've done when nobody thought the case could be proved or it could ever be done, like the commission of the mafia, Wall Street, using the racketeering laws in ways that had never been used before, sending 2 Nazis back to what they deserved, with one case being terribly controversial. People ask me, how can you take it, all the criticism and all the... Because when I go to bed at night, I know that I'm doing what I wanted to do from the day I became a lawyer. I'm serving justice. I know it sounds corny, but this is corruption. This is corruption at a very, very high level. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican. It was an American vice president that sold out his office, and he sold out the integrity of the United States of America. We are a joke in Ukraine. We go there and we say, you should stop the corruption. And every time Joe Biden went there, they laughed at him. You're telling us to stop the corruption? And you're pulling millions out of here? We have got to fix this. It's a matter of national security. It's a matter of having a solid relationship and creating a solid situation in a country that's enormously important to us. But if we're going to send them $100 million in aid, and only 20 million is going to get to where it's supposed to go, maybe you can see why the president was concerned. And because the Democrats are the major beneficiaries of this corruption, maybe you can see why they're doing this phony impeachment. Because, boy, this is phony as you know what, based on hearsay and nonsense. This is based on evidence. And you're going to hear it all over the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much.